When grieving Atlanta baker Nia Monroe challenges celebrity chef Marco Leclerc to a peach tart duel, she never expects an invite to Tuscany or the firestorm that follows. Can love rise from the heat? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The Atlanta rain pounded against Nia Monroe's apartment windows as she wiped away tears with the back of her hand. 3 weeks since Grandma Bess had passed, and the pain still felt fresh. The small kitchen counter was covered with flour, butter, wrappers and peach pits, evidence of her third attempt at recreating her grandmother's famous peach cobbler. "I'm missing something," Nia muttered, tasting the filling. It was good, but not Grandma's good, not the taste that had filled the house every summer Sunday after church. At 29, Nia had built a decent life for herself. Her food blog had a small but loyal following. She taught cooking classes at the community center, and she'd even catered a few local events. But without Grandma Bess, the kitchen felt empty, like cooking had lost its heartbeat. Nia grabbed her phone and collapsed onto the couch, scrolling mindlessly through social media. Her finger stopped on a video. Marco Leclerc, the celebrity chef whose cookbooks she'd collected and whose techniques she'd studied, was demonstrating his famous peach tart flambe. The Tuscan sunset behind him made his estate look like something from a dream. "The secret," Marco was saying in his smooth accent, "is to respect the peach. Let it speak for itself." Nia snorted. "Let it speak for itself? Please, you've got to coax a peach sweet-talk it." She watched as he flambéed the dessert with rum and cinnamon, the blue flames dancing across the perfect slices of fruit. Even through the screen, she could tell it would taste incredible. But not like home. Not like Grandma's. 3 glasses of wine later, Nia found herself typing a direct message to Marco Leclerc's official account. "Bet I can make your peach tart better than you." She hit send before she could think better of it, then gasped, "Oh my God, what did I just do?" She tossed her phone across the couch like it had burned her. "He's got millions of followers, he'll never even see it." She cleaned up the kitchen, putting away the remnants of her baking attempts, and went to bed, forgetting all about her impulsive message. 3 days later, Nia was arranging fresh pastries in the display case at Sweet Somethings, the bakery where she worked part-time, when her phone buzzed. Probably Tasha asking about girls' night. She wiped her hands on her apron and checked the notification. Her heart stopped. "No way," she whispered, staring at the message from Marco Leclerc's verified account. "Bold claim from someone I've never heard of. But I'm intrigued. If you're serious about that bet, I'm hosting a small gathering at my Tuscany estate next week. Bring your best peaches, impress me." There was a link to book a flight and details about transportation from the airport. "What are you staring at?" asked her co-worker Desiree, peering over her shoulder. "Girl, is that the Marco Leclerc?" "This has to be some assistant messing with me," Nia said, but her hands were shaking. "What did you do to get his attention?" Desiree asked, eyes wide. "Ideen may have told him I could make a better peach tart than him." Desiree burst out laughing. "That is so you, always picking fights with people who could crush you. Thanks for the vote of confidence," Nia said, rolling her eyes. "So are you going?" Desiree asked. "To Italy on a chef's invitation I got through Instagram? That's crazy." "That's the opportunity of a lifetime," Desiree corrected. "When's the last time you did something just for you? Besides, what would Grandma Bess say?" Nia knew exactly what Grandma would say. She'd tell me to pack my good knife and show that fancy chef what real peaches taste like. 1 week later, Nia found herself in a car winding up the hills of Tuscany, clutching a carefully packed basket of Georgia peaches. She'd spent her savings on this trip, telling herself it was a tribute to Grandma Bess. The reality of what she was doing hit her as the driver pulled up to a sprawling villa surrounded by cypress trees and olive groves. "This is insane," she muttered, smoothing down her sundress. "I don't belong here." The massive wooden doors opened, and a woman in crisp linen welcomed her. "Ms. Monroe, I'm Sophia, Mr. Leclerc's assistant. Please come in. Marco is expecting you in the kitchen." Nia followed Sophia through rooms filled with antique furniture and modern art until they reached a kitchen that made her gasp. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating marble countertops, copper pots hanging from the ceiling, and a massive island in the center. And there he was. Marco Leclerc stood at the stove, stirring something that smelled divine. He was taller than he looked on TV, broad-shouldered in a simple white t-shirt, dark curls falling across his forehead. When he turned to face her, Nia felt her mouth go dry. His warm brown skin seemed to glow in the Tuscan light, and his eyes, dark and intense, locked onto hers. "So," he said, a slight smirk playing on his lips, "you're the woman who thinks she can outdo me." Nia lifted her chin. "I don't think I know." He raised an eyebrow, amused. "American confidence. Refreshing." He nodded toward the basket. "Are those your secret weapons?" "Georgia peaches," she said. "The best in the world." "Bold statement in the land of Italian produce," he replied, wiping his hands on a towel and approaching her. "May I?" Nia handed him the basket. He selected a peach, brought it to his nose, and inhaled deeply. Something flickered across his face. "Respect, maybe." "Good choice," he admitted. Then he leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Impress me." The challenge in his voice sent a rush of heat through her body that had nothing to do with the warm kitchen. "Where can I put my things?" she asked, determined not to be intimidated. Sophia showed her to a guest room that was bigger than Nia's entire apartment. After washing up, she changed into more comfortable clothes and headed back to the kitchen, tying her hair back as she went. Marco was chopping herbs with precise, efficient movements. He glanced up as she entered. "The other guests arrive tomorrow," he said. "Tonight we cook." "Other guests?" Nia asked, surprised. "Food critics, fellow chefs, some friends. I host these gatherings monthly. It helps to keep the creative juices flowing." He handed her an apron. "Consider this your audition." "I didn't realize I was auditioning for anything," Nia said, tying the apron around her waist. "Everyone who comes through that door wants something from me," Marco said matter-of-factly. "A job, a connection, publicity." "I just want to prove a point," Nia said. Marco laughed, a rich, genuine sound that softened his features. "That's refreshing. What point?" Nia hesitated. How could she explain that this was about more than peaches? That it was about honoring her grandmother, about proving that good food didn't need fancy techniques or exotic ingredients to be exceptional. "That sometimes simpler is better," she said finally. Marco studied her, his expression unreadable. "We'll see." For the next few hours they worked side by side, preparing dinner. Nia was nervous at first, acutely aware of his credentials compared to hers. But in the kitchen, her confidence returned. She moved with the same ease she'd had at Grandma's side, tasting, adjusting, trusting her instincts. Marco watched her closely. "You haven't been professionally trained," he observed. "My grandmother taught me everything I know," Nia said, slicing garlic paper thin. "And where did she train?" "In a kitchen with 7 kids to feed and not much money," Nia replied. "The best school there is." Marco's expression changed slightly. "My mother was the same way, could make a feast from almost nothing." For a moment, something genuine passed between them. A shared understanding of food as love, as necessity, as creativity born from constraint. Then Marco's phone rang. He checked it, frowned, and stepped out of the kitchen to take the call. When Naran, he returned, the moment was gone. "Dinner's almost ready. We'll eat on the terrace." Under the stars, with the Tuscan countryside spread out before them, they shared the meal they'd created together. Marco opened a bottle of wine from his vineyard, pouring generously into Nia's glass. "So," he said after they'd eaten in comfortable silence for a while, "tell me about this better peach tart." Nia took a sip of wine. "I'll show you tomorrow." "Not even a hint?" he asked, leaning forward. "You want my secrets before the competition?" "That's not how this works, chef." He laughed again, and Nia found herself watching the way his whole face transformed. On TV, he was always so serious, so intense. This Marco was different. "What made you send that message?" he asked suddenly. Nia looked down at her plate. "Honestly, grief and wine. Not a great combination." "Grief? My grandmother passed away 3 weeks ago. She's the one who taught me to cook. I was trying to recreate her peach cobbler when I saw your video." Marco's face softened. "I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you," Nia said. Cooking was our thing. When I'm in the kitchen, I still feel her with me, you know? Marco nodded slowly. I do know. He refilled their glasses. To grandmothers who taught us to love food, they clinked glasses, and as Nia looked into his eyes, she felt a flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with the competition. Later that night, unable to sleep in the unfamiliar bed, Nia wandered back to the kitchen. To her surprise, Marco was there making tea. Jet lag? He asked, reaching for another cup. This place is so quiet, she said. In Atlanta, there's always noise, traffic, neighbors, something. It took me a while to get used to the silence, too, he admitted, handing her a cup of fragrant tea. How long have you lived here? 5 years. After my 3rd Michelin star, I needed... He paused, searching for the word. And space. From what? Marco stirred honey into his tea. People, expectations, the constant performance of being Chef Leclerc. Nia could hear the quotation marks around his name, the way he separated himself from his public persona. Must be hard being famous, she said, then winced at how trite it sounded. But Marco didn't seem to mind. It's complicated. I'm grateful for everything I have, but sometimes I miss cooking just to make people happy, not to impress them. In the dim kitchen light with his guard down, he looked younger, more vulnerable. Nia realized with a start that he was probably close to her age, despite his accomplishments. Is that why you invited me? To cook just for the joy of it? Marco smiled, a small private smile. Maybe. Or maybe I just wanted to see the woman bold enough to challenge me over social media. They talked for hours, about food, about growing up with strong women in the kitchen, about the first dishes they learned to make. By the time Nia returned to her room, the sun was beginning to rise, and she felt like she'd glimpsed the real man behind the celebrity chef facade. The next morning, the kitchen was a flurry of activity. Staff prepared for the arrival of guests, and Marco was all business, the intimate conversation of the night before seemingly forgotten. Ready for our contest? He asked, handing her a chef's coat with her name embroidered on it. You had this made for me? Nia asked, touched by the gesture. I take all challenges seriously, he said with a wink. Throughout the day, guests arrived. Elegant Europeans, famous chefs Nia recognized from food magazines, critics whose reviews could make or break restaurants. She felt out of place among them, acutely aware of her lack of credentials. A tall blonde woman air-kissed Marco on both cheeks, her hands lingering on his shoulders. Darling, it's been too long. Vivienne, Marco said. Always a pleasure. Vivienne turned to Nia, eyes sweeping over her dismissively. And you are? Nia Monroe, she replied, extending her hand. I'm here for the peach tart contest. Vivienne's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. Contest? Marco, you didn't mention you were doing one of your little competitions this weekend. It was a spontaneous addition, Marco said smoothly. How charming, Vivienne said in a tone that suggested it was anything but. She turned back to Marco. We have much to discuss, darling. Your cookbook proposal, the new restaurant concept, business can wait until after dinner, Marco said firmly. Today is about food and friends. The afternoon passed in a blur of introductions and small talk. Nia felt increasingly nervous about the contest. These people weren't just food lovers. They were experts, professionals. What had she been thinking? As the sun began to set, Marco called for everyone's attention. Tonight we have a special treat. Ms. Monroe has traveled all the way from Georgia to challenge my peach tart. We'll both prepare our versions, and you'll be the judges. The kitchen fell silent as they worked side by side. Nia focused on her grandmother's technique, the little touches that made the dessert special, the hint of nutmeg, the splash of bourbon, the way the crust was rolled paper thin in some places and left thicker in others for textural contrast. She was aware of Marco watching her as he prepared his own tart. His movements were precise, economical, those of a man who had spent thousands of hours perfecting his craft. When both tarts emerged from the oven, golden and bubbling, the kitchen filled with the scent of caramelized peaches and buttery pastry. Marco plated his with the flair of a Michelin-starred chef, a quenelle of cream, a delicate tuile, an artistic drizzle of caramel. Nia served hers simply, with a small scoop of vanilla ice cream slowly melting over the warm tart. The guests tasted both, murmuring appreciatively. Nia couldn't read their reactions, couldn't tell if they were just being polite about her offering. Finally, it was Marco's turn. Nia placed her version of the tart in front of him, hands slightly trembling. "You said to impress you." Marco took a bite, stopped. The kitchen was quiet. He chewed slowly, looked up at her. "It's not better than mine." Her chest tightened. She glared. "But," he added, his voice softening, "it might be better than anything I've ever tasted." The room erupted in surprised murmurs. Vivian's face darkened, with something like jealousy. Before Nia could reply, Marco's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his face changed. "The press knows you're here." Nia stiffened. "What do you mean?" Marco showed her his phone. On the screen was a gossip site with the headline, "Chef Leclerc's new flame, mystery woman spotted at Tuscan estate." And there was a photo of her, arriving with her basket of peaches, looking up at the villa with wonder on her face. "This is not good," Marco said, running a hand through his hair. "My publicist is already fielding calls." "Why is this a problem?" Nia asked, confused. "I'm just here for a cooking challenge." Marco's expression was grim. "In my world, nothing is ever that simple." Vivian appeared at his side, reading the article over his shoulder. "Oh dear," she said, not sounding concerned at all. "You know how the press loves to speculate about your love life, Marco. Ever since Isabelle." Marco shot her a warning look. "Not now, Vivian." "Who's Isabelle?" Nia asked. The room fell uncomfortably silent. "No one," Marco said firmly. "It's not important." But from the way the other guests exchanged glances, Nia knew it was very important indeed. "I should go," she said, suddenly feeling like an intruder. "No," Marco said, touching her arm. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her. "You just got here, don't let this ruin your trip." But the warm, intimate atmosphere of the previous night was gone, replaced by tension and unspoken complications. Nia looked around at the curious faces, at Vivienne's smug expression, at Marco's troubled eyes, and wondered what she had gotten herself into. And just like that, the sweetness curdles. The morning after the tart competition, Nia woke to sunlight, streaming through the large windows of her guest room. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then it all came rushing back, the competition, Marco's praise, and then the photo. She grabbed her phone from the nightstand and groaned. Overnight, the story had spread. More gossip sites had picked it up, each with their own spin. Chef Leclerc's mystery woman, new romance heating up in the kitchen. Move over Isabelle. Marco's new muse is an American nobody. Sources close to Chef claim it's just a PR stunt. There were dozens of comments speculating about who she was and questioning her motives. Some were downright nasty. A soft knock at the door interrupted her scrolling. Sophia, Marco's assistant, entered with a tray of coffee and pastries. "Good morning, Ms. Monroe. Chef Leclerc thought you might prefer breakfast in your room today. Given the situation." "He's hiding me away?" Nia asked, sitting up in bed. Sophia's expression was diplomatic. "He thought you might appreciate privacy. The property is currently surrounded by paparazzi." "What?" Nia jumped out of bed and went to the window. Sure enough, she could see figures with cameras at the edge of the property, long lenses pointed toward the villa. "This is crazy," she muttered. "All this because I made a peach tart." "The public has always been fascinated by Chef Leclerc's personal life," Sophia said, setting down the tray. "Especially since the Isabelle scandal." Nia's ears perked up. "What? Scandal?" Sophia pressed her lips together. "It's not my place to say. Chef would like to speak with you when you're ready. He's in his study." After Sophia left, Nia showered and dressed, trying to process what was happening. She'd come to Italy for a cooking challenge, not to be fodder for gossip columns. She thought about calling Desiree, but decided against it. Her friend would just tell her to enjoy the drama. Marco's study was on the second floor, a warm room lined with cookbooks and food histories. He was at his desk, talking rapidly on the phone in French. When he saw Nia, he gestured for her to sit while he finished the call. "My publicist," he explained after hanging up. I'm sorry about all this. What exactly is all this? Nia asked. Why is everyone making such a big deal about me being here? Marco sighed, running a hand through his curls. The press has always been interested in my personal life. After my second Michelin star, I became something of a celebrity. It was no longer just about the food. And Isabelle? Nia asked directly. Who is she? Marco's expression hardened. She was my fiancée and my sous chef. Was? She sold a tell-all story to the tabloids 2 years ago. All the intimate details of our relationship, exaggerated for maximum drama. She even shared private photos. His jaw tightened. Then she launched her own cooking show based on her newfound fame. That's awful, Nia said, genuinely sympathetic. It was a difficult time, Marco admitted. I retreated here, focused on my work. Eventually, the press moved on to other scandals. He gestured toward the window. Until now. I should leave, Nia said. I don't want to cause problems for you. No, Marco said quickly, surprising her with his vehemence. I don't want you to go. Why not? Marco hesitated, then smiled ruefully. Your peach tart really was exceptional. Nia knew he wasn't telling her everything, but she let it slide. So what do we do? My publicist thinks we should give them something. A statement, a controlled photo op. Something to satisfy their curiosity. What kind of statement? That you're a talented American chef here for a culinary exchange. Professional, nothing more. The words stung more than they should have. Fine, Nia said flatly. That's the truth anyway. Marco studied her face. Is it? The question hung in the air between them. Charged with possibilities neither was ready to acknowledge. Before Nia could respond, there was a knock at the door, and Vivian entered without waiting for an answer. Marco, darling, we need to discuss damage control. She barely glanced at Nia. I've been fielding calls all morning from Gourmet Lifestyle. They're concerned about the image this project's just before the launch of your cookbook. There's no damage to control, Marco said firmly. Nia is a guest here for a culinary exchange. Vivian raised a perfectly shaped eyebrow. A culinary exchange with someone who has no formal training or credentials. Please, Marco, you need to think about your brand. Nia felt her face flush, with anger and embarrassment. I should let you two talk business, she said, standing up. Nia, wait, Marco began, but she was already heading for the door. By all means, protect your brand, she said over her shoulder. Nia spent the rest of the morning in the kitchen, aggressively kneading bread dough. The staff gave her a wide berth, sensing her mood. Cooking had always been her therapy, her way of processing emotions, and right now she had plenty to process. Who did Vivian think she was? And why did Marco just sit there and let her speak that way? The memory of Vivian's dismissive tone made Nia push her hands into the dough. With renewed vigor, I hope that dough didn't personally offend you, a voice said from behind her. Nia turned to find a slender man with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes watching her with amusement. Just working out some frustrations, she said, wiping flour from her hands. I find chopping onions more therapeutic, personally. All those tears can be blamed on the vegetables. He extended his hand. Jean-Paul Renard, food critic for Le Monde. Nia shook his hand, recognizing the name of one of Europe's most respected food writers, Nia Monroe. Ah, the famous peach tart maker, he said with a smile. Your dessert was the talk of the kitchen last night. Quite a feat to impress our Marco. I'm starting to think it might have been better if I hadn't, Nia said ruefully. Jean-Paul chuckled. The price of excellence, my dear, may I? He gestured to her dough. Nia nodded, and he broke off a small piece, smelling it before tasting. Sourdough? He asked. With a touch of rye, Nia confirmed. Bold choice, the sourness will complement the sweetness of... He glanced at the other ingredients she had laid out. Peach jam. You're making a play on pain perdu? Nia smiled, impressed by his quick analysis. Grandma Bess's specialty, French toast stuffed with peach preserves. Comfort food, Jean-Paul observed. The best kind. They worked side by side for a while, Jean-Paul sharing stories of the food world's most famous chefs. He had a gift for making Nia laugh, helping her forget the morning's tension. How did you meet Marco? She asked as they waited. For the bread to rise. I gave his first restaurant a terrible review, Jean-Paul said with a chuckle. He tracked me down and demanded I come back for another meal. He was so passionate, so convinced of his vision, that I agreed. The second meal was transformative. I wrote a new review and we've been friends ever since. That sounds like him, Nia said, smiling despite herself. Stubborn. Like someone else I'm getting to know, Jean-Paul replied with a wink. By lunchtime, the kitchen was filled with the smell of fresh bread and simmering peaches. Several of the other guests wandered in, drawn by the aroma. Even Vivienne appeared, eyeing the spread with reluctant interest. "What's all this?" Marco asked, entering the kitchen. He'd been absent all morning dealing with press calls. "Ms. Monroe has been teaching us a traditional American breakfast," Jean-Paul announced. "It looks divine." Marco's eyes found Nia's, a question in them. She gave a small nod, letting him know she was okay. "Well then," Marco said, rolling up his sleeves. "Let me set the table." The informal lunch was a hit. Even Vivienne had to admit that Nia's French toast was exceptional. The conversation flowed, moving from food trends to travel stories. For a while, Nia forgot about the paparazzi outside and the gossip swirling around her presence. After lunch, Marco caught up with her in the hallway. "Can we talk? Somewhere private?" He led her to a small garden at the back of the property, hidden from view by tall hedges. A stone bench sat beneath an ancient olive tree, offering shade from the afternoon sun. "I want to apologize for Vivienne," Marco said as they sat down. "She can be protective. Of you or your brand?" Nia asked pointedly. Marco smiled ruefully. "Both, I suppose. She's my publisher and has a financial stake in my success." "Is she also your girlfriend?" The question slipped out before Nia could stop it. Marco looked surprised, then laughed. "Vivienne, God no, we dated briefly years ago. Now she's just a business partner. An opinionated, occasionally maddening business partner." Nia felt a ridiculous sense of relief. "She doesn't seem to like me much. Vivienne doesn't like anyone who might distract me from making her money," Marco said dryly. "But she's right about one thing. I do need to be careful about my image. After Isabelle..." "You don't trust people," Nia finished for him. Marco was quiet for a moment. "It's not that simple. In my position, it's hard to know who's genuine and who's just interested in what I can do for them." "I get that," Nia said softly. "After my last relationship ended, I swore off dating for a while. He was using me to get to my boss. I was catering for a record executive at the time. Thought he could get his demo tape in the right hands." "People can be cruel," Marco agreed. They sat in companionable silence, the Italian sun warming their faces. "So what happens now?" Nia asked eventually. "With the press and everything?" "Now," Marco said, standing up and offering his hand. "We give them something to talk about." Marco's plan was bold. Instead of hiding from the cameras, they would host an impromptu cooking demonstration in the villa's outdoor kitchen, visible from where the paparazzi was stationed. Marco and Nia cooking side by side, clearly engaged in a professional exchange. "The best way to control the narrative is to own it," Marco explained as they prepared ingredients. "We show them exactly what this is, two chefs sharing techniques." "I'm not a chef," Nia reminded him. Marco looked at her seriously. "Yes, you are. Having a title or working in a restaurant doesn't make you a chef. Understanding food, respecting ingredients, creating dishes that move people, that's what makes a chef. And you do all of those things." His words warmed her, more than the Italian sun. The demonstration began, and as Marco had predicted, the photographers went wild, capturing shots of them working together. Marco was charming and professional, explaining techniques to the small audience of guests while exchanging ideas with Nia. For her part, Nia found herself relaxing into the role. This was what she loved: cooking, teaching, sharing the joy of food. If the press wanted to watch, let them. By the time they plated the final dish, a fusion of French technique and Southern American flavors, Nia was actually enjoying herself. The guests applauded, and Marco raised his glass in a toast. "To new perspectives," he said, his eyes locked on Nia's. That evening, after the guests had dispersed to dress for dinner, Nia found herself alone with Marco in the kitchen again. They were cleaning up, falling into an easy rhythm together. "Thank you for today," she said, wiping down a counter. "For standing up for me." "You stood up for yourself," Marco replied. "I just gave you the platform." Nia paused, turning to face him. "Why did you really invite me here, Marco? It wasn't just because of my message, was it?" Marco set down the towel he was holding. "No," he admitted, "it wasn't just that." "Then what?" "I saw your food blog," he said quietly. "The one you have linked in your profile. I read your posts about cooking with your grandmother, about how food connects us to memory, to the people we've lost." He moved closer to her. "You write about food the way I used to feel about it, before the stars, before the fame. I wanted to meet the woman who still had that pure joy." Nia's heart raced as he stepped closer. "And? Did I live up to expectations?" "You exceeded them," Marco said softly. His hand rose to touch her cheek, and Nia felt herself leaning into his touch. The kitchen door swung open, and they jumped apart. "It was Sophia. Sorry to interrupt," she said, not looking sorry at all. "Chef, the first dinner guests are arriving." Marco cleared his throat. "Thank you, Sophia. We'll be right there." After Sophia left, an awkward silence fell between them. The moment, whatever it had been, was broken. "We should go change," Nia said, not meeting his eyes. "Nia," Marco began, but she was already moving toward the door. "It's fine," she said quickly. "We've given the press enough to talk about for one day, don't you think?" In her room, Nia stared at her reflection in the mirror. What was she doing? She'd come to Italy to prove a point about cooking, not to fall for a celebrity chef with trust, issues, and a complicated life. In 3 days, she'd be back in Atlanta, back to her small apartment and her job at the bakery. This wasn't her world, but as she slipped into the one nice dress she'd packed, a deep blue sundress that Grandma Bess had always said brought out her eyes, Nia couldn't deny the flutter in her stomach at the thought of seeing Marco again. The dinner was set in the villa's grand dining room, with long tables arranged in a U-shape. Nia found herself seated between Jean-Paul and an Italian winemaker, with Marco at the head of the table, too far away for conversation. Throughout the meal, she felt his eyes on her, but whenever she looked up, he was engaged with someone else. It was maddening. The food was exceptional, course after course of Italian specialties prepared by Marco's staff, but Nia found she had little appetite. She pushed food around her plate, nodding at Jean-Paul's witty observations, without really listening. After dinner, the party moved to the terrace for drinks. The night was warm, stars blanketing the Tuscan sky. Nia found a quiet corner, nursing a glass of wine and wondering if she could slip away unnoticed. Not enjoying the party? Vivian's voice cut through her thoughts. Nia turned to find the publisher, watching her with narrowed eyes. "It's lovely," she said diplomatically. "I'm just a little overwhelmed." "This isn't your world," Vivian said bluntly. "You know that, right?" Nia bristled. "I never claimed it was. Marco lives in the spotlight. Everything he does is scrutinized, analyzed. His relationships aren't just personal, they're part of his public image." Vivian sipped her champagne. "He needs someone who understands that world, someone who can help him navigate it, not complicate it." "Someone like you?" Nia asked pointedly. Vivian laughed, a cold sound. "I've known Marco for years. I've seen women come and go. They all think they're special, that they've seen the real Marco behind the fame." She leaned closer. "They're all wrong. This is who he is, the chef, the celebrity, the brand. There is no separating Marco from Chef Leclerc." "Why are you telling me this?" Nia asked, though she already knew the answer. "Because you seem like a nice girl who's out of her depth," Vivian said with false sweetness. "And I'd hate to see you get hurt when you realize this was just a momentary distraction. For him, Marco always returns to what matters, his career." Before Nia could respond, there was a commotion at the other end of the terrace. A woman had arrived, drawing everyone's attention. She was strikingly beautiful, with dark hair falling in waves, down her back, and a dress that looked like it cost more than Nia's rent. "Is that—" Nia began. "Isabelle," Vivian confirmed, a satisfied smile playing on her lips. How interesting that she chose tonight to make an appearance. Nia watched as Isabelle made her way through the crowd, air-kissing guests and laughing loudly. When she reached Marco, she threw her arms around him in a familiar embrace. Marco's face was unreadable as he extricated himself from her grasp. "If you'll excuse me," Nia said to Vivian, setting down her wineglass. "I think I'll turn in early." As she moved toward the door, she heard Isabelle's voice carry across the terrace. "Marco, darling, aren't you going to introduce me to your new protégé? The internet is buzzing about her." Nia quickened her pace, but not fast enough. Marco caught up with her at the door, his hand gently catching her wrist. "Don't leave," he said quietly. "I don't belong here," Nia said, echoing Vivian's words. Despite herself. "That's not true," Marco insisted. "Please stay." "Why?" "So I can be part of whatever drama is playing out between you and your ex?" Nia shook her head. "I didn't sign up for this, Marco." "Isabelle wasn't invited," Marco said, his voice tight. "Vivian must have told her about the gathering." "Well, she's here now," Nia said, "and she clearly wants to talk to you. Don't let me keep you from your guests." "Nia, please." "Marco." Isabelle's voice interrupted them as she approached, her smile predatory. "Aren't you going to introduce—" "Just properly." Marco's jaw tightened. "Isabelle, this is Nia Monroe, Nia Isabelle Laurent." "The famous peach tart baker," Isabelle said, looking Nia up and down. "How quaint." Nia forced a smile. "Nice to meet you, Isabelle. If you'll excuse." "Me, I was just heading to bed." "So early?" Isabelle pouted. "But the party's just getting interesting. I was hoping to hear all about how you managed to capture our Marco's attention. It's not easy to impress him, is it?" There was something in her tone, a hint of mockery. That made Nia's temper flare. "Actually, it seemed pretty straightforward. Make good food, don't betray his trust, simple recipe." Isabelle's smile faltered, and Marco's eyes widened in surprise. "If you'll excuse me," Nia said, turning to leave. "She's got fire," she heard Isabelle say to Marco as she walked away. "I can see why you like her. Always did have a type, didn't you, darling?" Nia didn't hear Marco's response. She was already heading up the stairs, her heart pounding. What was she doing? Getting involved in a soap opera she wanted no part of. It was time to go home, back to her real life. In her room, she began to pack her things. She'd book a flight back to Atlanta first thing in the morning. This had been a mistake from the beginning. A soft knock at her door interrupted her packing. Expecting Sophia, she called out, "Come in." But it was Marco who entered, looking tired and frustrated. "Running away?" he asked, eyeing her half-packed. "Suitcase, being practical," Nia corrected. "This isn't why I came here." "Why did you come?" Marco asked, closing the door behind him. "You know why. To prove I could make a better peach tart. To honor my grandmother, not to get caught up in—" She gestured vaguely. "Whatever this is." "And what is this, exactly?" Marco asked, moving closer. Nia sighed. "I don't know, Marco. A distraction? A PR stunt? A rebound from your ex showing up? Vivian made it pretty clear I don't belong in your world." "Vivian doesn't decide who belongs in my world," Marco said firmly. "I do, and, I want you in it." "For how long?" Nia challenged. "Until the press loses interest. Until the next food blogger challenges you. I go back to Atlanta in 3 days, and you'll go back to being Chef Leclerc, and all of this will just be a story we tell." "It doesn't have to be," Marco said softly. He was standing so close now that Nia could smell his cologne, a warm, spicy scent that made her dizzy. "What are you saying?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm saying," he reached out, his fingers gently lifting her chin. "I'm saying that meeting you has reminded me of something I'd forgotten. Why I started cooking in the first place. The joy of it, the connection." Nia's heart raced as his face lowered toward hers. But just as his lips were about to touch hers, a loud banging on the door made them both jump. "Marco!" It was Sophia's urgent voice. "You need to come quickly. There's a problem with the press." Marco closed his eyes briefly, frustration evident on his face. "What kind of problem?" Sophia opened the door, her expression grave. "They've published new photos and a story." She handed Marco her tablet. Nia watched his face darken as he read the screen. "What is it?" she asked, dread pooling in her stomach. Marco turned the tablet so she could see. There on the screen was a photo of them from that afternoon, but not from the cooking demonstration. It was from the garden, the private moment when Marco had touched her cheek. The headline made her blood run cold. Exclusive. Chef Leclerc's new flame. The truth behind their secret affair. The article was filled with quotes from sources close to the chef, claiming that Nia had been secretly seeing Marco for months, that she had engineered the social media challenge to publicly legitimize their relationship, that she was trying to leverage his fame to launch her own cooking career. "This is a lie," Nia said, her voice shaking. "All of it." "Of course it is," Marco agreed, his face tight with anger. "But how did they get this photo? The garden is completely private. Someone at the villa must have tipped them off," Sophia said quietly. "Someone who knew you were going there to talk." Nia and Marco looked at each other, the same name in both their minds. Vivienne. "I need to call my publicist," Marco said grimly. "We need to issue a denial immediately." "Will that even help?" Nia asked, feeling sick. "The story's already out." "There? We can contain this," Marco insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. "How? By saying what? That I'm just a professional acquaintance after that photo?" Nia shook her head. "The damage is done, Marco." "Don't say that," he said, reaching for her hand. "We can fix this." But as Sophia's phone began to ring with more press calls, and as Nia thought about her small, quiet life in Atlanta, now forever changed by this unwanted attention, she wasn't so sure. What had started as a simple challenge, a tribute to her grandmother, had spiraled into something she never wanted. Public scrutiny, malicious lies, a story that wasn't hers to tell. And the worst part, despite everything, as she looked at Marco's worried face, all she wanted was to finish what they'd started before Sophia knocked on the door, to feel his lips on hers, to see if the connection she felt was real or just another illusion. "You should go deal with this," she said, pulling her hand away. "We can talk in the morning." Marco hesitated, clearly torn. "Nia, go," she said firmly. "Your public needs you, Chef Leclerc." After they left, Nia sat on the edge of the bed, her head in her hands. How had everything gone so wrong so quickly? And how could she fix it without making things worse? Her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Desiree back in Atlanta. "Girl, you're trending. What's going on with you and that hot chef?" Attached was a link to yet another gossip site, this one with the headline, "From food fight to romance, the Southern belle who stole Chef Leclerc's heart." Nia threw her phone across the room. Nia barely slept that night. Every time she checked her phone, there were more messages from friends back home, more notifications from social media, more gossip articles with increasingly outlandish claims about her relationship with Marco. By morning, she felt exhausted and overwhelmed. She was debating whether to venture downstairs for coffee when a knock came at her door. It was Sophia, looking apologetic. "Good morning, Ms. Monroe. Chef Leclerc asked me to give you this." She handed Nia a small envelope. "He also wants you to know that the press situation has escalated. It might be best if you stay in your room. For now, I can bring you breakfast." "Escalated how?" Nia asked, alarm rising in her chest. Sophia hesitated. "Perhaps it's better if you read his note." After Sophia left, Nia tore open the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note from Marco. "Nia, I'm sorry about all of this. My publicist is working to contain the situation, but it's complicated. Isabelle has given an interview claiming she came to reclaim what's hers and found me already moving on with you. It's all lies, but the press is eating it up. I need to go to Rome for emergency meetings with my team. I hate leaving you to deal with this alone, but I'll be back by tonight. Please stay at the villa where it's safe. The press are swarming the gates. Whatever happens, please know that these past days with you have meant more to me than I can say." Marco. Nia read the note twice, her emotions a confusing mix of anger, disappointment, and longing. Part of her wanted to pack her bags and leave immediately, to escape the circus this had become. But another part, a part that grew stronger when she thought of Marco's almost kiss, wanted to stay and fight. She spent the morning in her room, ignoring her buzzing phone and the increasingly wild headlines. Around noon, there was another knock at her door. This time it was Jean-Paul, the food critic. "May I come in?" he asked gently. "I thought you might appreciate some company." Nia stepped aside to let him enter, grateful for a friendly face. "How are you holding up?" Jean-Paul asked, taking a seat by the window. About as well as you'd expect, Nia said with a weak smile. I never wanted any of this. The price of catching Marco Leclerc's attention, Jean-Paul said, his tone sympathetic. He doesn't do anything halfway, our Marco. When he likes something or someone, the whole world must know. That's just it, Nia said, sinking onto the edge of the bed. I don't know if he likes me or if he just likes my cooking. Jean-Paul laughed softly. For Marco, they are one and the same. Food is how he connects with people. It's his language of love. He studied her face. But I think you understand that better than most. It's how my grandmother showed she cared, Nia admitted. She wasn't big on saying I love you, but she'd make your favorite meal when you were sad or teach you a special recipe when she was proud of you. Then you and Marco speak the same language, Jean-Paul said simply. That's rare. Even if we do, what does it matter? Look at this mess. Nia gestured toward her phone. I'm going to be that woman in the gossip columns, the one who tried to sleep her way into the culinary world. Only if you let that be your story, Jean-Paul said firmly. You have a voice, Nia. Use it. How? No one's going to listen to me over Isabelle Laurent, celebrity chef. Jean-Paul's eyes twinkled. Perhaps not, but they might listen to Jean-Paul Renard, Europe's most respected food critic. By afternoon, Nia had a plan. With Jean-Paul's help, she would take control of her own narrative. He had arranged for her to give an exclusive interview to his colleague at Le Monde, a straightforward account of how she really came to be at Marco's villa and what her actual relationship with him was. No embellishments, no drama, Jean-Paul advised, just the simple truth. It will be a refreshing change from the tabloid nonsense. While waiting for the journalist to arrive, Nia decided to do what she always did when stressed: cook. The kitchen was mercifully empty. Everyone else either hiding from the press or dealing with it. She gathered ingredients for her grandmother's peach cobbler, the recipe she'd been trying to perfect when this all began. As she worked measuring and mixing, she felt her anxiety begin to ease. This was what she knew, this was where she belonged. She was sliding the cobbler into the oven when a voice behind her made her jump. So this is where you're hiding, Nia. Turned to find Isabelle leaning against the doorway, looking impossibly glamorous in a silk blouse and tailored pants. I'm not hiding, Nia said, closing the oven door. I'm baking. Same difference, Isabelle replied with a dismissive wave. Running away from reality into the comfort of the kitchen. Marco does the same thing. Did you need something? Nia asked. Directly, not in the mood for games. Isabelle sauntered into the kitchen, running a manicured finger along the countertop. I was curious about you, the woman who's supposedly stolen Marco's heart. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I wanted to see if you're really as rustic as the photos suggest. Nia bristled at the thinly veiled insult, but kept her voice steady. If by rustic you mean I prefer substance over style, then yes, I am. Ooh, she bites back, Isabelle said with a laugh. Good. You'll need that fire to survive in Marco's world. I'm not trying to survive in his world, Nia said. I have my own. That's what I thought too once, Isabelle said, her voice softening slightly, before I understood how this game is played. I'm not playing any game, Nia insisted. Everyone's playing, honey. Some just don't know the rules yet. Isabelle perched on a stool, studying Nia with new interest. So what's your angle? A cookbook? A TV show? Your own restaurant backed by the Leclerc name? I don't have an angle, Nia said, feeling her temper rise. I came here to make a peach tart, not to scheme my way into anything. Isabelle looked genuinely surprised. You really believe that, don't you? It's the truth. The truth, Isabelle repeated as if testing the word. How novel. She leaned forward. Let me tell you something about Marco Leclerc that you won't read in any magazine profile. He's brilliant, passionate, and generous to a fault. But he's also obsessed with control. His kitchen, his recipes, his public image, everything must be perfect, including the people around him. What's your point? Nia asked warily. My point is that right now you're a variable he can't control, and that both terrifies and fascinates him. Isabelle stood, smoothing her blouse. He'll try to fix this situation, to package it neatly for public consumption, and in doing so, he'll try to package you too. You don't know me, Nia said firmly. And you don't know what's between Marco and me. Perhaps not, Isabelle conceded. But I know Marco, and I know what happens when reality doesn't match his carefully crafted vision. She headed for the door, then paused. Whatever you're baking smells divine, by the way. Marco always did have excellent taste in food and women. After Isabelle left, Nia leaned against the counter, her mind spinning. Was there any truth to what Isabelle had said? Was Marco's interest in her genuine, or was she just another ingredient in the recipe of his life, carefully measured and controlled? The journalist from Le Monde arrived late in the afternoon. Nia told her story simply and honestly. The impulsive DM, the surprise invitation, the cooking challenge that had been misconstrued by the press. "And your relationship with Chef Leclerc?" the journalist asked. "Is it romantic, as the tabloids suggest?" Nia hesitated, thinking of the almost kiss, the charged moments in the kitchen, the way her heart raced when he looked at her. "We share a passion for food," she said carefully. "Beyond that, we're still getting to know each other." A diplomatic answer, the journalist observed with a smile. "An honest one," Nia corrected. "Not everything has to be a headline." As evening approached, Nia waited anxiously for Marco's return. The villa felt different without him, emptier somehow despite the staff and remaining guests. She found herself on the terrace, watching the Tuscan sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Sophia said, joining her with 2 glasses of wine. She handed one to Nia. "Chef called. His meetings are running late, but he should be back before midnight." "Thank you," Nia said, accepting the wine. "For everything. You've been kind through all this craziness." Sophia smiled. "It's not the first media storm I've weathered with Chef Leclerc, though I must say this one is particularly uncolourful." "I'm sorry for causing trouble," Nia said sincerely. "You haven't caused anything," Sophia assured her. "This is the world we live in, Chef's world anyway. Everything becomes a story, whether it's true or not." They sipped their wine in companionable silence, watching the stars emerge as darkness. "Fel, can I ask you something?" Nia said finally. "About Marco?" "You can ask," Sophia replied with a small smile. "I may not answer." "Fair enough," Nia acknowledged. Is he happy? I mean, with his life, his career, all of this?" She gestured to the grand villa and the expansive grounds beyond. Sophia considered the question carefully. "He's successful, respected, accomplished." She paused. "But happy? I'm not sure he even knows what that would feel like anymore." "Because of Isabelle?" Nia asked. "Partly," Sophia admitted. "But it started before her. The more famous he became, the more isolated he felt. The more perfect his food, the less joy he seemed to take in creating it." She looked at Nia thoughtfully. "Until this week." "What do you mean?" "I've worked for Chef Leclerc for 7 years. I've seen him cook with the world's greatest chefs, for celebrities and royalty, but I've never seen him cook the way he does. With you. Like he's remembering why he fell in love with food in the first place." Nia felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the wine. "Really?" Sophia nodded. "Whatever happens between you two, you've given him something valuable, a reminder of what matters." Later that night, Nia was dozing in the armchair in her room when a soft knock woke her. She opened the door to find Marco standing there, looking exhausted but relieved to see her. "You're still here," he said, the tension visibly draining from his shoulders. "Where else would I be?" Nia asked, stepping aside to let him in. "I half expected you to have fled back to Atlanta," Marco admitted. "I wouldn't have blamed you." "I considered it," Nia said honestly. "But I don't run from problems." "This particular problem might be resolved," Marco said, a hint of optimism in his voice. "My team spent all day in damage control. We've issued statements, threatened legal action against the worst offenders, and reached out to more reputable publications to counter the gossip." "I gave an interview to Le Monde," Nia told him. "Jean-Paul arranged it." Marco looked surprised, then pleased. "Good, that's good. They're respected. What did you tell them?" "The truth," Nia said simply. "About how I came to be here, about the cooking challenge, about us." "And what did you say about us?" Marco asked, his voice softening as he moved closer. Nia's heart raced. "That we share a passion for food, that we're still getting to know each other, A diplomatic answer, Marco said, echoing the journalist's words. That's what she said too, Nia replied with a small smile. And what did you tell her? That it was an honest one. They stood close now, the air between them charged with unspoken feelings. Nia could smell his cologne, could see the fatigue in his eyes, but also something else, a vulnerability she hadn't noticed before. I talked to Isabelle today, Nia said, breaking the moment. Marco's expression darkened. What did she want? To size me up, I think, to see if I was a threat. And what did you tell her? That I'm not playing whatever game she thinks this is. Nia paused, gathering her courage. She said some things about you, about how you need to control everything and everyone around you. Marco sighed, running a hand through his hair. Isabelle sees what she wants to see. We were together for 2 years and she never really knew me. He met Nia's eyes, but somehow in just a few days I feel like you do. Do I? Nia asked softly. You see past Chef Leclerc to Marco. The real me, not the brand. He reached for her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. The man who stayed up all night talking with you about our grandmother's recipes. The man who admitted that your peach tart might be better than anything he's ever tasted. Nia smiled at the memory. That was a pretty big admission for someone with 3 Michelin stars. It was the truth, Marco said simply. And it terrified me. Why? Because it meant that everything I've built my life around, my training, my techniques, my reputation, could be matched by someone who cooks from the heart, by someone who never forgot why we do this in the first place. He was so close now that Nia could feel the warmth of his breath. Her eyes drifted to his lips, remembering how close they'd come to kissing before being interrupted. Marco, she whispered, what are we doing? Something that terrifies me even more than your peach tart, he admitted, his voice low. And then, finally, his lips met hers. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, as if he was giving her a chance to pull away. But Nia found herself leaning into it, her free hand rising to touch his face. Marco responded by deepening the kiss, his arm wrapping around her waist to pull her closer. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathless. Nia felt dizzy, her heart pounding in her chest. This was crazy. She'd known this man for less than a week, and yet it felt like they'd been moving toward this moment from the first time she tasted his food, from the first challenge she'd issued. I should go, Marco said, though he made no move to release her. It's late, and we both need sleep. You could stay, Nia suggested, surprising herself with her boldness. Marco's eyes darkened with desire, but he shook his head reluctantly. Not tonight, not with everything that's happening. When I stay with you, I want it to be because we both choose it, not because we're caught up in this whirlwind. Nia nodded, understanding but disappointed. Tomorrow, then. Marco smiled, touching her cheek gently. Tomorrow. We'll face whatever comes together. After he left, Nia fell onto her bed, her fingers touching her lips where she could still feel his kiss. Despite the media circus, despite Isabelle and Vivian and all the complications, she couldn't stop smiling. For the first time since her grandmother died, she felt truly alive. She was still smiling when she drifted off to sleep. Morning brought sunshine streaming through the windows and the scent of fresh coffee. Nia stretched lazily, reliving the kiss in her mind, before reaching for her phone to check the time. What she saw made her bolt upright. The headline glared back at her. Chef Leclerc caught between 2 women. The night visit that changed everything. Below it was a grainy but unmistakable photo of Marco leaving her room late last night and another of their kiss by the doorway. Someone had been watching. Them. Someone inside the villa. Her phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was Marco. Have you seen it? He asked without preamble, his voice tight with anger. Just now, Nia said, her stomach churning. How is this happening? Who's taking these photos? I don't know, but I'm going to find out, Marco promised. We have a leak. Someone inside the villa selling stories to the press. It has to be Vivian, Nia said, or Isabelle. Maybe, or one of the staff or another guest. Money can be very persuasive. Marco sighed heavily. I'm sorry, Nia. This isn't what I wanted for us." "I know," she said softly. "Don't leave your room yet," Marco instructed. "I'm calling an emergency staff meeting. I'll come get you after." After hanging up, Nia paced the room anxiously. This was getting out of control. What had been a simple cooking challenge had morphed into a full-blown scandal. And for what? A few salacious headlines. A chance to catch a celebrity chef in a compromising position. An hour later, Marco knocked on her door. His face was grim. "Did you find the leak?" Nia asked as she let him in. "Not yet, but I've restricted access to the villa. Only essential staff remain." He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "This shouldn't be happening. Not here. This place was supposed to be my sanctuary." Nia touched his arm gently. "We'll figure it out." Marco covered her hand with his expression softening. "You're remarkable, you know that? Anyone else would have fled days ago." "I'm too stubborn for my own good," Nia admitted with a small smile. "Grandma Bess always said so. Your grandmother was a wise woman." Marco hesitated, then said, "I received a call from Good Morning America this morning. They want us both on the show to talk about the social media challenge that sparked a romance." Nia stared at him in disbelief. "You're not seriously considering it?" "Of course not," Marco assured her. "But it shows how big this story has become. It's not going away, Nia." "So what do we do?" Marco took both her hands in his. "I have a suggestion. It's radical, but hear me out. I'm listening. We leave. Today. Get away from the cameras, the press, all of it. And go where?" "My grandmother's house in Martinique," Marco said, his eyes lighting up with the idea. "It's remote, private. No one knows about it except family. We can just cook together, talk, figure out what this is between us without the world watching." The idea was tempting, escaping the circus, having time alone with Marco without interruptions or prying eyes. But it also felt like running away. "What about your guests, your obligations here?" "Sophia can handle it," Marco said dismissively. "I've cancelled all appearances for the next week anyway, given the circumstances." "A week," Nia repeated, the reality sinking in. "Marco, I have a job, a life in Atlanta. I can't just disappear to Martinique for a week." Marco's face fell. "Of course, I wasn't thinking." He released her hands, stepping back. "That was presumptuous of me." "It's not that I don't want to," Nia clarified quickly. "But this is all happening so fast. 3 days ago, I was just a fan who sent you a bold message. Now we're kissing and you're inviting me to your family home in the Caribbean." "When you put it that way, it does sound a bit mad," Marco admitted with a rueful smile. "A bit," Nia agreed, but she was smiling too. "So what do you want to do?" Marco asked, his expression serious again. "Whatever you decide, I'll support it." Nia thought for a moment. I think I need to go home. Back to Atlanta. Back to my real life." Marco's disappointment was visible, but he nodded. "I understand. But," Nia continued, reaching for his hand, "that doesn't mean this has to end. Just that it needs to happen in the real world, not in this bubble." "The real world," Marco repeated thoughtfully. "It's been a while since I lived there." "Then maybe it's time you visited," Nia suggested. "My apartment's tiny, and the view is just the parking lot, but I make a mean cup of coffee." Marco's smile returned, brighter than before. "Are you inviting me to Atlanta, Miss Monroe?" "I believe I am, Chef Leclerc," Nia replied, squeezing his hand. "No cameras, no press, just us, seeing if whatever this is can survive outside of Tuscany." "I'd like that," Marco said softly. "Very much." Their moment was interrupted by a sharp knock at the door. It was Sophia, looking flustered. "Chef, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a situation downstairs. Vivian and Isabelle are having words." Marco closed his eyes briefly, as if summoning patience. "Of course they are. I'll be right there." After Sophia left, he turned back to Nia. "Duty calls. We'll finish this conversation later." "Go," Nia said, with an understanding smile. "I'll start looking at flights to Atlanta." Marco paused at the door. "You're sure about this? Going home?" "I'm sure it's what I need right now," Nia said honestly. "The rest we'll figure out together." After Marco left to deal with the Vivian Isabelle situation, Nia began packing in earnest. As much as part of her wanted to accept Marco's offer of a Caribbean escape, she knew returning to Atlanta was the right choice. She needed her own space, her own world, to process everything that had happened. And if what she felt for Marco was real, it would survive the distance and the return to reality. She was folding her clothes when her phone rang. It was Desiree. "Girl, where have you been?" her friend demanded. "I've been texting you for days." "Are you really hooking up with Marco Leclerc? The whole internet is talking about it." "It's complicated," Nia said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "And most of what you're reading isn't true." "But some of it is," Desiree pressed excitedly. "Spill." Nia couldn't help but laugh. "I'll tell you everything when I get home. I'm booking a flight for tomorrow." "Tomorrow? But you just got there." "Trust me, I've packed enough drama into 4 days to last a lifetime," Nia said dryly. "Well, you might want to reconsider coming back just yet," Desiree said, her tone suddenly serious. "Why? What's going on? You haven't seen it? It's all over social media. People are digging into your past, Nia. Someone found those old blog posts about your ex-boyfriend, the musician." Nia's blood ran cold. Years ago, after discovering her ex had only dated her to get close to her boss, she'd written some angry, detailed blog posts about the experience. She'd taken them down almost immediately, embarrassed by her emotional outburst, but apparently someone had found archived versions. "They're saying you have a pattern of using men in the food and entertainment industry to advance your career," Desiree continued grimly. "They're painting you as some kind of social climber who targeted Marco Leclerc." "That's ridiculous," Nia exclaimed. "Those posts were from 5 years ago, and they were taken out of context." "I know that, but the internet doesn't care about context," Desiree said. "There's a whole hashtag trending, you gold digger chef." Nia felt sick. This was worse than the photos, worse than the rumors about her and Marco. This was an attack on her character, her integrity. "Have you told Marco?" Desiree asked. "No," Nia said weakly. "He's dealing with enough right now." "You need to tell him before he sees it elsewhere," Desiree advised. "This kind of thing can spiral fast." After hanging up, Nia sat motionless, trying to process this new development. She opened social media and immediately wished she hadn't. The hashtag was everywhere, along with snippets from her old blog posts taken out of context and twisted to make her look calculating and manipulative. There was a knock at the door. Dreading another crisis, Nia opened it to find Jean-Paul. "Ah, there you are," he said cheerfully. "I've been looking for you. The Le Monde piece is out, and it's quite good if I do say so." He stopped, noticing her expression. "What's wrong?" Nia showed him her phone. Jean-Paul read the posts, his face darkening. "This is character assassination," he said angrily. "Who would do such a thing?" "Someone who wants to hurt me. Or Marco, or both of us." Nia sank back onto the bed. "What am I going to do, Jean-Paul? He already has trust issues because of Isabelle. When he sees this..." "He'll believe you," Jean-Paul said firmly. "Marco is many things, but he's not a fool. He knows genuine passion when he sees it, in food and in people." "I hope you're right," Nia said, but doubt crept into her voice. "I should find him. Tell him before someone else does." She found Marco in the kitchen, alone for once, aggressively chopping vegetables. From his expression, Nia could tell the Vivian-Isabelle confrontation hadn't gone well. "That poor carrot never stood a chance," she said lightly, trying to ease into the difficult conversation. Marco looked up, his face softening at the sight of her. "Just therapy," he said, gesturing with the knife. "Cheaper than a psychiatrist. Anything you want to talk about?" "Not particularly." He set down the knife, wiping his hands on a towel. "Vivienne and Isabelle both insist they're not behind the leaks to the press. I'm inclined to believe them, if only because neither would be stupid enough to get caught." Nia took a deep breath. "Speaking of the press, there's something I need to show you." She handed him her phone, open to the trending hashtag and the excerpts from her old blog posts. Marco read in silence, his expression unreadable. "These were from 5 years ago," Nia explained hurriedly. "My ex-boyfriend, he was a musician trying to get his demo to my boss. When I found out he was using me, I was heartbroken and angry. I wrote those posts in the heat of the moment and took them down the next day. I never thought that someone would dig them up and use them against you," Marco finished for her, his voice surprisingly gentle. He handed the phone back. "You don't need to explain, Nia. I understand hurt and anger, and the internet never forgets." "You're not concerned?" Nia asked, surprised by his calm reaction. "About what? That you once wrote angry blog posts about a man who betrayed you?" Marco shook his head. "If anything, it makes me respect you more. You have every right to be cautious around men with fame and influence." Relief washed over Nia. "I was afraid you'd think I had a pattern of using men in the industry, that maybe I was using you too." Marco stepped closer, cupping her face in his hands. "I know who you are, Nia Monroe. I've tasted your food, remember. No one who cooks with that much heart could be calculating or manipulative." Nia felt tears spring to her eyes. "How can you be so sure? You barely know me." "I know enough," Marco said simply. "The rest we'll learn together." He leaned down to kiss her, and Nia met him halfway, all her fear and doubt melting away in the warmth of his embrace. Whatever storm was raging outside this villa in this moment, they were anchored to each other. The sound of a camera shutter broke them apart. They turned to find a young kitchen assistant standing in the doorway, phone raised, a guilty expression on his face. "Antonio," Marco's voice was like ice. "What are you doing?" The young man paled, lowering his phone. "Chef, I can explain." "You're the leak," Nia realized, the pieces falling into place. "You've been selling photos to the press." Antonio's silence was confirmation enough. "How long?" Marco demanded, his voice dangerously quiet. Just since the peach tart competition," Antonio admitted, eyes downcast. "A reporter contacted me, offered a lot of money for inside information. I never meant to hurt anyone, Chef, I swear. My mother is sick and the medical bills." Marco's face was a storm of emotions, anger, betrayal, disappointment. "Get out," he said finally. "Pack your things and be gone within the hour. Sophia will settle your final pay." "Chef, please, now," Marco roared, making both Antonio and Nia jump. After the young man fled, Marco leaned heavily against the counter, his eyes closed. "I trusted him," he said quietly. "I brought him from Rome, gave him a chance when no one else would. And this is how he repays me." Nia moved to his side, placing a gentle hand on his back. "He made a mistake, a big one, but it sounds like he was desperate." "That doesn't excuse betrayal," Marco said harshly. "No," Nia agreed, "but it might explain it." Marco looked at her, his anger giving way to weary resignation. "You're too forgiving, and you're too quick to shut people out," Nia countered gently. "Not everyone is Isabelle, Marco. Not everyone will hurt you if you let them close." Marco's expression softened. "I'm learning that," he said, taking her hand. Slowly, they stood, together in the quiet kitchen, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the floor. Despite everything, the leaked photos, the trending hashtag, the betrayal by Antonio, Nia felt a strange sense of peace. They had weathered each storm together and somehow emerged stronger. "What happens now?" she asked finally. "Now," Marco said, squeezing her hand, "we take control of our own story." His plan was bold but simple. Instead of hiding from the press or trying to manage the narrative through publicists and statements, they would face it head-on, together. "We give one interview," Marco explained as they walked through the olive grove, away from prying eyes and listening ears, "to someone we trust. We tell the whole story, from your DM to the peach tart competition to everything that followed. No spin, no sanitized version, just the truth." "Jean-Paul," Nia suggested. "Perfect," Marco agreed. "And after that, no more interviews, no more explanations. We live our lives however we choose, and the world can speculate all it wants." "And how do we choose to live?" Nia asked, her heart beating faster. Marco stopped walking, turning to face her. "I still want you to go back to Atlanta," he said, surprising her. "You were right before. We need to see if this can work in the real world, not just in this Tuscan fantasy." And then And then I come to visit as we discussed. I try your famous coffee." His smile was warm, full of promise. "And maybe if you're willing, we could work on a project together." "What kind of project?" "A cookbook," Marco said, excitement creeping into his voice. "But not just any cookbook. A fusion of my technical training and your instinctive approach. Classic techniques meet Southern comfort food. Your grandmother's recipes and mine side by side." The idea took Nia's breath away. "You want to write a cookbook with me? But I'm not a professional chef. I don't have your credentials." "That's exactly why it would work," Marco insisted. "You have something no culinary school can teach: heart, authenticity, a connection to food that comes from love, not ambition." Nia was speechless, overwhelmed by the offer and what it represented. Not just a professional opportunity, but Marco's belief in her, his respect for her cooking despite her lack of formal training. "Think about it," he urged when she didn't respond. "No pressure, no deadlines, just an idea for the future." "I don't need to think about it," Nia said, finding her voice. "Yes, absolutely yes." Marco's face lit up with a joy that made him look younger, less burdened by his fame and past disappointments. He pulled her into an embrace, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around. Nia laughed, wrapping her arms around his neck. When he set her down, she was dizzy in the best possible way. "You know," she said, catching her breath, "we haven't settled the most important question yet." "Which is?" Marco asked, his arms still around her waist. "Whether my peach tart is officially better than yours," Nia said with a grin. Marco laughed, the sound echoing through the olive grove. "I think we need a rematch, on neutral territory." "My kitchen in Atlanta?" Nia suggested. "Deal," Marco agreed, sealing it with a kiss. As they walked back to the villa, hand in hand, Nia felt a sense of possibility she hadn't experienced since before her grandmother died. Whatever came next, the interview with Jean-Paul, her return to Atlanta, the cookbook project, they would face it together, with the same passion and honesty they brought to their cooking. The story that had begun with a late-night challenge and a basket of Georgia peaches was far from over. In fact, Nia realized it was just beginning to simmer. 2 weeks later, Nia stood in her small Atlanta kitchen, nervously rearranging the spice rack for the third time. Marco's flight was due to land in an hour, and Sophia had texted to confirm. They were on their way from the airport. "Will you stop fidgeting?" Desiree asked from her perch on the counter stool. "You're making me dizzy." "I can't help it," Nia admitted, wiping down the already spotless counter. "What if this was all just, I don't know, vacation romance? What if he walks in here and realizes I'm just a regular person with a tiny apartment and not some exotic cooking challenge? Then he's not the man you think he is," Desiree said simply. "But from everything you've told me and everything I've read in that Jean-Paul interview, he seems pretty smitten." The interview with Jean-Paul had been published in Le Monde 4 days after Antonio's betrayal was discovered. True to their agreement, Marco and Nia had told the whole story, unvarnished and honest. The piece had gone viral, translated into a dozen languages, shared and commented on by food lovers around the world. The response had been overwhelmingly positive. People were charmed by the unlikely romance between the 3-star chef and the Southern home cook who had challenged him. The hashtag #YourGoldDiggerChef had been replaced by Ours Peach Tart Love, with fans recreating both Marco's and Nia's versions of the dessert. "I just want everything to be perfect," Nia said, adjusting the bowl of Georgia peaches on the counter, a callback to their first meeting. "Honey, he's not coming for your apartment, he's coming for you," Desiree pointed out. "And, from what I hear, your kitchen skills aren't the only thing he's interested in." "Desiree?" Nia exclaimed, blushing despite herself. "Just saying," her friend said with a wink. "The man flew across an ocean for you. I think he can handle your rental kitchen and IKEA furniture." The doorbell rang and Nia froze. "He's early." Or, "You've been cleaning for so long you lost track of time," Desiree said, checking her watch. "Want me to get it?" "No," Nia said, taking a deep breath. "I've got it." She smoothed her hands over her sundress, the same one she'd worn when she first arrived at Marco's villa, and went to open the door. Marco stood there, looking slightly travel-worn, but devastatingly handsome in jeans and a simple white shirt. He held a bouquet of wildflowers in one hand and a small package in the other. "Nia," he said, his face lighting up at the sight of her. And just like that, all her nervousness evaporated. This wasn't Chef Leclerc, celebrity and brand. This was Marco, the man who had kissed her in a Tuscan kitchen and promised to see if what they had could survive in the real world. "You're here," she said, unable to keep the smile from her face. "I'm here," he confirmed, stepping forward to kiss her softly. The kiss was sweet and brief, but it sent the same thrill through Nia as their first. When they broke apart, she was aware of Desiree watching with undisguised interest from behind. "Her? Marco, this is my best friend Desiree," Nia said, gesturing for him to come inside. "Desiree, this is Marco Leclerc, the famous chef," Desiree said with a grin, extending her hand. "I've heard so much about you, and read even more." "All good things, I hope," Marco said, shaking her hand. "Mostly," Desiree replied with a wink. "Well, I should get going. Leave you two to catch up." "You don't have to leave," Nia protested half-heartedly. "Oh, I really do," Desiree insisted, grabbing her purse. "Besides, I have a date with that cute barista from Grounds for Thought. Call me tomorrow with all the details." She hugged Nia quickly and whispered, "He's even hotter in person," before slipping out the door. Alone at last, Nia and Marco stood, looking at each other, suddenly shy despite everything they'd shared in Italy. "These are for you," Marco said, handing her the flowers and the package. "The flowers are from a market near the airport. The box is from France, my grandmother's recipe for pain au chocolat. I thought we could make them together tomorrow." Nia took the gifts, touched by the thoughtfulness. "Thank you, they're beautiful," she gestured around the small apartment. "So, this is it, my humble abode. Not quite a Tuscan villa, but it's home." Marco looked around with genuine interest. "It's lovely, very you." "Very me?" Nia asked, raising an eyebrow as she put the flowers in water. "Warm," Marco explained, following her into the kitchen. "Inviting. No pretense. Well, the kitchen's a bit small for someone used to professional spaces," Nia said apologetically, gesturing to the modest setup. "But it works for me." Marco smiled, running his hand along the counter. "Some of the best meals I've ever had were cooked in kitchens a quarter this size. My grandmother could work miracles in a space no bigger than your bathroom." "Speaking of miracles," Nia said, opening the refrigerator, "I may have prepared a few things for your arrival." She'd spent the last 2 days cooking. Grandma Bessie's fried chicken, collard greens with ham hock, macaroni and cheese, and of course, peach cobbler. The table was already set with her grandmother's best dishes, the ones Nia only used for special occasions. "You didn't have to go to all this trouble," Marco said, though his eyes lit up at the sight of the food. "I wanted to," Nia said simply. "This is my version of hospitality. Not staff and luxury linens, but food made with love." Marco's expression softened. "It's perfect." Over dinner, they caught up on the 2 weeks they'd been apart. Marco had finalized the departure of his publishing deal with Vivienne's company and signed with a new publisher for their cookbook project. Nia had given notice at the bakery, though she'd agreed to stay on part-time while they worked on the book. "Jean-Paul sends his regards," Marco said as they shared the peach cobbler. "He's convinced our cookbook will be a sensation." "No pressure." "There," Nia said with a nervous laugh. "We don't have to do it," Marco assured her, reaching for her hand across the table. "If it's too much too soon, we can wait." Nia shook her head. "No, I want to do it. It's just a little overwhelming. 2 months ago, I was just a home cook with a small food blog. Now I'm writing a cookbook with Marco Leclerc." 2 months ago, I was just going through the motions, Marco admitted, creating perfect plates that meant nothing to me anymore. Now I'm excited about food again, about possibilities. The warmth in his eyes made Nia's heart race. "So what happens now with us, I mean? You're here for a week and then what, you go back to Tuscany and we text until the next visit?" "Actually," Marco said, his expression turning serious, "I've been thinking about that. What would you say to me staying a bit longer than a week?" "How much longer?" Nia asked, her pulse quickening. "As long as it takes to write our cookbook," Marco replied. "I've spoken with my team. Sophia can manage the villa and my business affairs remotely. I can find a place here in Atlanta, somewhere with a good kitchen, of course. We could work together every day, testing recipes, writing, creating." Nia was stunned. "You'd do that? Move to Atlanta temporarily?" "I would," Marco said without hesitation. "I told you in Italy what we have is worth exploring. I meant it. What about your restaurants? Your commitments in Europe?" "I can travel back when necessary," Marco said. "But the truth is I've been running on autopilot for years. My executive chefs run the restaurants. My name sells books and TV appearances. It's all become formulaic." "And this?" Nia asked softly. "Us, the cookbook? That's not formulaic?" Marco smiled, squeezing her hand. "This is the most unexpected, unplanned thing I've done in a decade, and it feels right." Later that night, after dishes were cleared and wine was finished, they stood together in Nia's small kitchen. Marco had rolled up his sleeves, insisting on helping with cleanup despite her protests. "This feels strange," Nia admitted as they worked side by side, her washing, him drying. "Domestic," Marco suggested. "Normal," Nia clarified. "After all the drama in Italy, the press, the photos, Isabelle, everything, this is so ordinary in a good way." "I've had enough extraordinary to last a lifetime," Marco said, hanging the dish towel to dry. "Ordinary sounds perfect." He moved behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist as she finished wiping the counter. Nia leaned back against his chest, relishing the solid warmth of him. "So," he murmured against her ear, "about that rematch." Nia hummed, distracted by the feel of his breath on her neck. "The peach tart challenge," Marco clarified, turning her in his arms to face him. "I believe we agreed on neutral territory. Your kitchen." Nia laughed, looping her arms around his neck. "Are you seriously thinking about baking right now?" "I'm thinking about a lot of things right now," Marco admitted, his voice dropping to a register that sent shivers down Nia's spine. "But I always follow through on a challenge." "Tomorrow," Nia promised, rising on tiptoe to brush her lips against his. "Tonight, I have other plans." Marco raised an eyebrow. "Do these plans involve cooking?" "Definitely," Nia said with a mischievous smile. "But of a different kind." Marco's laughter was swallowed by her kiss, a kiss that quickly deepened into something more urgent, more hungry. Without breaking apart, they stumbled toward Nia's bedroom, hands exploring, hearts racing. Later, as they lay tangled in Nia's sheets, the moonlight filtering through the curtains, Marco traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "What are you thinking?" Nia asked, nestled against his chest. "That I'm glad you sent that message," Marco said softly. "That night in your kitchen watching my video." "Me too," Nia admitted. "Though I still can't believe I did it. Grandma Bess would have had a fit." Nia Monroe, challenging a famous chef. "Like that? Where are your manners?" Marco chuckled. "I think she would have been proud, standing up for what you believe in, that your way of cooking has value too." "Maybe," Nia conceded. "She did always say I was too stubborn for my own good." "Stubborn? It's enough to win a peach tart competition against a 3-star chef," Marco pointed out. "I didn't exactly win," Nia reminded him. "You didn't exactly lose either," Marco countered. "I said it wasn't better than mine, but it might be better than anything I'd ever tasted. That's a victory in my book." Nia propped herself up on an elbow to look at him. "How you really meant that? It wasn't just a line to make me feel better?" "Nia," Marco said seriously, "I have never lied about food. It's sacred to me. If I said your tart was exceptional, it was exceptional." The sincerity in his eyes made Nia's chest tighten with emotion. This, she realized, was what had been missing from her life since Grandma Bess died. Someone who understood that food wasn't just sustenance or even art. It was connection, memory, love made tangible. "I think I'm falling in love with you," she said softly, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Instead of pulling away or looking uncomfortable, Marco smiled, reaching up to touch her cheek. "I think I'm already there," he admitted. "Have been since you walked into my kitchen with that basket of Georgia peaches and dared to challenge me." Nia's heart soared. She leaned down to kiss him, pouring all her feelings into it. The grief that had led her to send that message, the nervousness of meeting him, the joy of cooking together, the fear of the media storm, and now, the perfect contentment of being, here in her own bed, with this man who saw and valued her exactly as she was. When they broke apart, both breathless, Marco tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I have a confession to make," he he said. What? Nia asked, suddenly nervous. I knew who you were before you sent that message, Marco admitted. I'd been following your blog for months, your post about making your grandmother's sweet potato pie. After her funeral, it moved me. You write about food the way I used to feel about it before the stars and the fame complicated everything. Why didn't you tell me this in Italy? Nia asked, surprised. I was embarrassed, Marco said with a rueful smile. The great chef Leclerc, secretly reading a home cooking blog, finding more inspiration there than in any fancy restaurant or food magazine. And then when you challenged me, it felt like fate. So you invited me to Italy because you were already a fan of my cooking? Nia asked, trying to process this revelation. I invited you because you intrigued me, Marco corrected. The challenge was bold, but it was your voice in your writing, in your recipes, that made me want to meet you, to see if the woman behind those words was as authentic and passionate as she seemed. And, Nia prompted, a smile playing on her lips. And she exceeded all expectations, Marco said, pulling her down for another kiss. The next morning, they began work on their cookbook in earnest. Marco had brought notebooks filled with his grandmother's recipes, handwritten in French with notes in the margins. Nia spread out her collection of index cards with Grandma Bess's recipes, many stained with food and faded with age. They spent the day at Nia's kitchen table, comparing techniques, discussing flavor combinations, planning the structure of the I's book. Marco wanted to organize it by technique, braising, roasting, baking, but Nia argued for organizing by emotion. Food is about feeling, she insisted. Comfort food for sad days, celebration dishes for happy ones, simple meals for everyday nourishment. That's actually brilliant, Marco conceded after considering it. Not how a traditional cookbook would be structured, but that's what will make ours unique. By afternoon, they had spread out to the living room floor, recipes and notes surrounding them like a paper sea. Nia lay on her stomach, making a list of healing foods, dishes that had brought her comfort after loss or heartbreak. Marco sat cross-legged beside her, sketching possible layouts for the pages. What about this, he suggested, showing her a rough drawing. Your grandmother's recipe on one page, mine on the facing page, with our story of the dish in the middle. I love it, Nia said, sitting up to look more closely. Like a conversation between traditions. Exactly, Marco agreed, his eyes bright with excitement. And we can include variations, ways to combine elements from both recipes. Fusion comfort food, Nia said with a laugh. Who would have thought? It's what we are, Marco pointed out, setting down his notebook. French Caribbean technique meets Southern American soul in the kitchen, and he leaned over to kiss her. Elsewhere, they were interrupted by Nia's phone ringing. It was Jean-Paul. Ah, the lovebirds, he said when Nia put him on speaker. How goes the reunion? We're hard at work on the cookbook, Marco replied, not entirely truthfully. How's Paris? Rainy and full of tourists, Jean-Paul said with a sigh. But I'm calling with news. The interview has caused quite a stir in publishing circles. I've had 3 editors contact me, asking if they can reach out to you about the cookbook you mentioned. Marco and Nia exchanged surprised looks. Already? Nia asked. But we've barely started outlining it. That's the beauty of it, Jean-Paul explained. They're willing to offer an advance based on the concept alone. Marco's reputation combined with your fresh perspective, it's a compelling package. What about your new publisher? Nia asked Marco after they'd hung up with Jean-Paul. I thought you had already signed with them. For my next solo cookbook, yes, Marco clarified. But our project together is separate. We're free to take it wherever we want. This is happening so fast, Nia said, feeling slightly overwhelmed. A month ago I was baking muffins at Sweet Somethings. Now publishers are fighting over a cookbook I haven't even written. Marco took her hands in his. If it's too much, we can slow down, take our time, there's no rush. Nia shook her head. No, it's just, I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, you know, for something to go wrong. For you to realize I'm not special enough or talented enough or... Marco stopped her with a kiss. Nia Monroe, he said firmly when they broke apart. You are the most talented, authentic, passionate cook I've ever met. Your food has soul. That can't be taught in any culinary school or earned with any number of stars. You really believe that? Nia asked, still uncertain. I stake my reputation on it, Marco said without hesitation. Why do you think I want to write this book with you? Not because it's a good career move or because I'm trying to capitalize on our story. Because I believe in your vision, your voice. Because cooking with you makes me remember why I fell in love with food in the first place. Nia felt tears prick her eyes. I'm scared, she admitted, of letting you down, of letting Grandma Bess down. You could never let her down, Marco assured her. Everything you cook is a tribute to her. And as for me, he smiled, brushing away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. You challenge. Me inspire me, make me see food through new eyes. That's a gift, Nia, one I never expected to find when I opened that message about peach tart. Over the next few days, they fell into a comfortable rhythm. Mornings were spent developing recipes, afternoons testing them, evenings enjoying the results together. They ventured out occasionally, to farmers' markets for fresh ingredients, to a kitchen supply store where Marco insisted on buying Nia proper chef's knives, to sweet somethings where Nia's former co-workers fawned over Marco shamelessly on E. Their fifth day together, Nia woke to find Marco's side of the bed empty. She followed the scent of coffee to the kitchen, where she found him fully dressed, talking on the phone in rapid French. His expression was troubled. What's wrong? She asked when he hung up. Marco sighed, running a hand through his hair. That was Sophia. There's an issue at the restaurant in Paris. A health inspector found violations, minor ones, but enough to threaten our rating. I need to go there, sort it out in person. Oh, Nia said, trying to hide her disappointment. When do you leave? There's a flight this afternoon, Marco said reluctantly. I'd stay if I could, but no, I understand, Nia assured him, forcing a smile. Your business needs you. It's only been 5 days anyway. We knew you'd have to go back eventually. Marco moved to her, taking her face in his hands. I'm coming back, he said firmly, as if reading her thoughts. This isn't an excuse to leave, it's a temporary necessity. A week, maybe 2, to sort things out. And then I'll be back, just as we planned, to find a place here, to work on our book, to be with you. You promise? Nia asked, hating the vulnerability in her voice but unable to help it. I promise, Marco said solemnly. Besides, we haven't even had our rematch yet. Nia laughed despite herself. The peach tart competition. Exactly, Marco said, kissing her forehead. I have my reputation to defend. They spent the morning making a traditional French breakfast. The pain au chocolat from Marco's grandmother's recipe. The kitchen filled with the scent of butter and chocolate, a bittersweet farewell feast. As they ate, Marco reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. I got you something, he said, sliding it across the table. A thank you for these days together. Nia opened the box to find a delicate silver charm bracelet. There was only one charm, a tiny silver peach. It's beautiful, she said, touching it gently. I thought we could add to it, Marco explained. A charm for each milestone in our story. Nia felt tears threatening again. This man, who had seemed so intimidating on television, so closed off when she first arrived in Tuscany, had turned out to be thoughtful and romantic in ways she never expected. Help me put it on, she asked, holding out her wrist. Marco fastened the bracelet, his fingers lingering on her pulse point. Perfect, he said softly. The drive to the airport was quiet, both lost in their own thoughts. Nia kept touching the peach charm, a tangible reminder that this wasn't ending, just pausing. At the departure terminal, Marco pulled her into his arms. 2 weeks, he promised. Maybe less if I can sort things out quickly. I'll be here, Nia assured him, working on recipes, thinking of you. Every bite I taste, I'll be wishing it was yours, Marco said, his voice rough with emotion. Every kitchen I stand in, I'll be wishing you were beside me. Their goodbye kiss was tender and lingering, a promise rather than a farewell. As Marco walked through the security gate, he turned back one last time, blowing a kiss that made Nia smile through her tears. On the drive home, Nia's phone rang. It was Jean-Paul again. I've just heard from Penguin Random House, he said without preamble. They're offering a substantial advance for your cookbook. They want to fly you to New York next week to discuss details. Nia's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Both of us? Marco and me? Well, that's the thing, Jean-Paul said hesitantly. They're particularly interested in your perspective, the home cook who challenged the star chef. They've mentioned the possibility of you taking the lead, with Marco as a contributing author rather than co-author. That's ridiculous, Nia said immediately. It's our project, together. Equal partners. I thought you'd say that, Jean-Paul replied, sounding pleased. I'll tell them it's both or nothing. After hanging up, Nia felt a surge of pride. A month ago, she might have jumped at such an offer, grateful for any recognition. Now she understood her own worth and the value of what she and Marco were creating together. The apartment felt empty without Marco, but as Nia unpacked the groceries they'd bought that morning, she smiled at the notes he'd left throughout, recipe ideas scribbled on sticky notes, a shopping list for when he returned, a sketch of the two of them cooking side by side. She touched the peach charm on her bracelet, thinking of the journey that had brought her here. From a grief-stricken woman trying to recreate her grandmother's cobbler, to a cookbook author with a 3-star chef promising to return to her, the past month had been like something from a dream or a soap opera with its dramatic twists and turns, villains and allies, heartbreak and romance. But unlike a soap opera, Nia knew this story was real. The feelings were real. The connection was real. As she began preparing dinner just for herself tonight, Nia realized that for the first time since Grandma Bess died, she was truly happy. She was cooking not just to remember, but to create new memories. Not just to honor the past, but to build a future. A future with a man who had tasted her peach tart and found it exceptional. A man who saw her, valued her, challenged her. A man who had promised to return. And as she sliced fresh Georgia peaches for a simple dessert, Nia Monroe knew with absolute certainty that he would. 2 weeks later, Nia stood in the arrivals terminal at Atlanta International Airport, nervously fidgeting with the peach charm on her bracelet. Marco's flight had landed 20 minutes ago, but there was still no sign of him. Her phone buzzed with a text from Desiree. "Any sight of Chef Hottie yet?" "Not yet," Nia typed back, trying to ignore the knot of anxiety in her stomach. What if he'd changed his mind? What if the restaurant problems had been more serious than he'd let on? What if, once back in his world of Michelin stars and celebrity, he'd realized that their connection wasn't worth pursuing after all? She was about to check the flight status again when she spotted him, tall and unmistakable even from a distance, moving through the crowd with purpose. When he saw her, his face lit up in a smile that chased away all her doubts. Marco walked straight to her, dropped his bags at his feet, and pulled her into a kiss that made several nearby travelers break into applause. "I missed you," he said simply when they broke apart. "I missed you too," Nia replied, feeling the tension of the past 2 weeks melt away. "How was Paris?" "Complicated," Marco admitted, picking up his bags. "I'll tell you everything on the drive. But first," he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet pouch. "For your bracelet." Inside was another charm, a tiny silver Eiffel Tower. "Because even in Paris, all I could think about was getting back to you," Marco explained as he fastened it next to the peach. Nia's heart swelled with emotion. "I was afraid you might not come back," she admitted as they walked toward the exit. Marco stopped, turning to face her with serious eyes. "To Nia Monroe, let me be very clear. There is nowhere in the world I would rather be than with you. No kitchen I'd rather cook in, no book I'd rather write, no future I'd rather build." "Even without the Michelin stars and the villa and the fame?" Nia asked, needing to hear him say it. "Especially without those things," Marco said firmly. "They never made me happy. You do." As they drove back to Nia's apartment, which would soon be their apartment, at least until they found a place with a bigger kitchen, Marco told her about his chaotic 2 weeks in Paris. The restaurant issues had been resolved, but new complications had arisen. Vivian was threatening a lawsuit over his terminated contract. Isabelle had launched a competing cookbook project, clearly trying to capitalize on their story. "But none of that matters," Marco assured her. "I've hired lawyers to handle Vivian. Isabelle can do what she wants. Our book will speak for itself. Speaking of our book, Nia said, Penguin wants to meet with us next week. They tried to suggest I take the lead, with you as a contributor. Marco's eyebrows shot up. And what did you tell them? That it's both of us, equal partners, or nothing, Nia said firmly. Marco's smile was radiant. That's my girl. At home, they fell back into their rhythm, as if the 2 weeks apart had never happened. Marco unpacked his bags, including a suitcase full of specialty ingredients he'd brought from France, while Nia prepared a welcome home dinner. As they sat together at her small kitchen table, sharing food and stories from their time apart, Nia realized that this was everything she'd ever wanted without knowing it. Not fame or fortune or professional acclaim, but this: connection, understanding, mutual respect. A love built on shared passion and honest communication. I was thinking, Marco said as they cleared the dishes together, about the title for our cookbook. What did you have in mind? Nia asked, curious. Marco smiled, pulling her close. How about Stirred Not Shaken? Nia laughed, looping her arms around his neck. Perfect, she said, just like us. And as Marco's lips met hers, Nia knew that the story that had begun with a late-night challenge and a basket of Georgia peaches had found its happy ending. Or rather, its happy beginning, because the best recipes, like the best relationships, continued to evolve, surprising and delighting with each new variation. This particular recipe, 1 part Southern stubborn, 1 part French technique, equal measures passion and honesty, stirred gently with time and patience, promised to be the most satisfying of all.